Hello everyone, and welcome to the Forerunner Christian Chess Club. I'm Yukai Chow, and I am your teacher for today. Today, we're going to cover another Level A lesson, which is piece material. And we talked about how the pieces move in chess, right? And today we're going to talk about the value of each piece, because not every chess piece is born equal. So let's start with the most basic piece, which is the pawn. The pawn is worth 1 point. It's very, very simple. A pawn, a point. So there's 8 pawns, 8 points, right? And once I take a pawn, I get 1 more point. So pawns are 1 point. Very simple. Knights and bishops, they're both worth 3 points. So each knight is worth about 3 pawns. These 3 are equal. Same thing with a bishop, right? So usually when a bishop can exchange with 3 pawns, then the position is still equal. And if the bishop trades with a knight, let's say the knight is here, and let's say this bishop comes out, and this bishop takes this knight, and this pawn takes the bishop back. That's an equal trade because both sides lost 3 points. So bishops and knights are 3 points. Then we have rooks. Rooks are worth 5 points. 5 points, so the equivalent of 5 pawns, or, this is very important because this means that a rook is almost twice as valuable as a bishop or knight, right? These are 3 points, and this is 5 points. So if these two together, there's 6 points. It's only 1 point ahead from a rook. So therefore, you can see that if a rook and a pawn is the same value as a bishop and a knight, in some such situations, it's not as it's different. But most of the time, a rook is very, very powerful, and you never want to lose a rook for a knight or a rook for a bishop because that's a bad trade. And you will lose material, and usually you would lose. Now let's look at the queen. We all know the queen is the most powerful piece on the board, and the queen is worth 9 points. What 9 points means is that the queen is worth 2 bishops, or 2 knights and a bishop, or 2 bishops and a knight combined. Queen is very, very powerful. It also means that the queen is almost worth the value of 2 rooks, right? So in some such situations, let's say we have this position. This rook is attacking the queen, and it's defended by this rook. You could use your queen to take the rook will take the queen, and the rook will take the rook. And so at the end of the trade, white is actually still material up because white lost 9 points and black lost 10 points. Now again, in every scenario it's different. Sometimes having a queen is better than 2 rooks. Sometimes having 2 rooks is better than a queen. But generally it's 9 points versus 10 points. Now let's look at the king. The king is worth infinite amount of points because if the king loses, then you lose. There's no more point counting. But the king, oftentimes in the endgame, where there's not a lot of pieces left, let's say there's only a bishop and let's say a few pawns left. Let's say all these guys are gone. Gone. Alright, so in this position, in the end game, and we'll learn this later on too, the king should not hide in the corner anymore. The king should go out and fight in the center because there's not a lot of warriors left, and also the king is not in danger of being checkmated. So he needs to go and take out pawns and defend. And in this time, the king's battle power is worth about 3 points. So the same as a knight or a bishop. Now, the reason why we count points in chess is not because, oh, time's up, I have more points, so I win. Generally, that's not how chess works. It's just for a way for you to figure out who's winning, right? It's basically saying, hey, look, I have an extra rook, but he only has an extra knight. So I have a better position, and I'm winning. You could still lose when you're points behind, but most often, if you're points behind, you're material behind, and you don't have any other advantages, you'll lose the game. And you have to be very careful because a lot of times in Grandmaster games, if you're 1 point behind, you often just fight for a draw. Sometimes they even resign because they're 1 point behind. So every point is very valuable. So when you think about trading, you always have to think about that, right? So you always have to make sure you don't lose points. In this position, both sides lost a point, and that's fine. Everything's equal. But in some situations where, let's say this position, right? If black takes, white takes back, black takes. Now, black only lost 1 pawn and white lost 2 pawns, and black is 1 point ahead. And oftentimes when you're 1 point ahead, you have a pretty strong advantage, and you can actually win the game if you play correctly. Keep in mind, in this game, the queen will take the queen, possibly, and once the king takes the king can no longer castle. Okay, just a quick review of the castling rule. There's a lot of scenarios in trading that happens. Let's say one of the common potentials is when the king has castled, and let's say the bishop and knight is here. So in this position, it is possible for the knight to take this pawn, where the rook will take, and the bishop will take, and the king will take. So in this position, as you can see, the black lost the bishop and the knight, and white lost the king and the rook. And that's an equal trade. It's just a positional advantage. Now, usually this is not recommended for black, and not because black loses material, but because black had 2 strong pieces, happy pieces, controlling the center. And now those 2 pieces are gone. And white has, a sleeping rook and a hiding king. And now, the sleeping rook is gone. So it's usually not worth trading 2 very active pieces with a rook and pawn, but material-wise they're the same. So that's fine. There are other scenarios where, let's say, let me put those pieces back. All right. Let's say we have a scenario where, let's do this. There's a pin here. This happens a lot in chess, actually. You push the pawn, the bishop draws back, and let's say it's trapped. Okay. He pushes the pawn here, right? You can see that this bishop is trapped because bishops can only go diagonally. It's like, oh, I can't run back. But, I will lose points if I take this pawn. And this is true. So in this case, instead of having just the pawn take the bishop, it's better for the bishop to take the pawn, and this pawn will take the bishop, and the knight will take the pawn. Because now at least white lost 3 points, but at least black lost 2 instead of 3. So white still has a chance to fight and try to win. Yeah. So that's the basics of material. So you always want to remember how much they're worth, and you want to make sure you're not losing a queen for a smaller piece. Again, pawns are worth 1 point. 1 ding ding. Knights and bishop are worth 3 points. Ding 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 ding. Rooks are worth 5 points. Ding 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 ding. And then queens are worth 9 points, and I'm not even going to try. And king's infinite, but in battle, king's worth about 3 points. So that is the lesson today. Hopefully you remember the piece materials, and that will help you with a lot of things along with trading in the future. And it'll also help you figure out how to play chess positionally when you become an advanced player. All right, I will see you guys next time, and hopefully on a chessboard. Bye.